I didn't get information about being an artist. I didn't know how to do this. I just started learning it last year. And to have been as well, I would say for my own goals, I've been super successful in what I thought I could do. Granted, my story is going to be different than anyone else's in terms of what they could do. But I just want to share the knowledge that I've received in terms of making my art something that I can live off of, because I know that I'm going to do it. And it's not even like a question of if, it's just like when. There's just so many things that aren't talked about enough, especially within the art community. It should be open and it should be as accessible to as many people as possible.
Hello and welcome. As always, I'm Abbie. This is Stories Lived, Stories Told. And today, I invite you to join me in conversation with Sharon and Cadja as we take a communication perspective on investing in art. To take a communication perspective is to consider what we're making and how we're making it through our communication practices. This means we look closely at patterns, context, stories, and relationships, and that we use curiosity, mindfulness, collaboration, and dialogue to create better social worlds. Whether the topic of today's conversation is familiar to you or not, the hope is that using a communication perspective will reveal new ways of seeing and being. At the top of the episode, you heard our conversation partner today, Sharon. She is an artist, specifically a painter and a personal friend. She works full-time, but dedicates her free time to her art business, and she hopes to be able to share insight into her journey to other aspiring creatives. Following up our previous two conversations with Sid and Caitlin, this is the third installment for our February theme, all about taking a communication perspective on art. After today, we just have one more conversation to wrap up our month's theme around art, where we will continue what we have been doing the past two episodes, what we will do this episode, which is to continue to ask, what are we making in our art and why does it matter? So let's begin with Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Abbie. How are you?
I'm so great, and I'm so looking forward to talking to you today.
Yes, I am as well.
Good. Well, to start, tell me about yourself. Who are you? I know that's such a big question, but can you share at least a little piece of you? What are the experiences that shape you and what are you passionate about?
Yeah, my name is Sharon Cadja, and I use she, they pronouns. And I'm currently an assistant property manager at a property in Minnesota, but will soon to be the property manager, which is exciting. And I also have my own art business that I kind of started at the later half of last year. That's something that I really want to grow with, and I'm really passionate about being able to be more free with my time by investing in this.
Yeah.
I've just really realized that the more I do things, the more I know myself, and my art is really tapping into that. And so I want to continue that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you share a little bit more about your background with art and how you developed a love of art?
Yeah, so I started drawing and taking photos ever since I was a little kid. And so I've always loved being creative. I kind of grew in that I always was painting or drawing. And I was always trying to emulate styles of people or friends that I'd see, because I was just always so inspired by it. And that's so cool that someone can do that. I want to try it too. So I'd practice and practice. And then I got to college and everyone's always like, well, you need a job that's going to be stable and art is not going to get you there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of hard to hear. And it was really hard because I was I hadn't thought of any other thing I wanted to do. And I kind of had to push myself to at least consider different opportunities where I could be creative in a job role. In high school, I was in DECA, and DECA was really fun. It's kind of like Shark Tank. You basically create a product and then you will literally compete. You have to dress up in business clothes. And this is me in high school. So this is the most extroverted thing that I had to do. And I was nerve-wracked every time I had to present, but I would do it.
Yeah.
And it was fun to create these products and draw up these designs and think of the slogan and how the prices were and who's demographic and all this stuff. It was wow, it was a lot, but it was fun. And so I was okay, I might be able to do this in college. So I have a business degree from Ball State because we both went.
Hmm.
And I did business marketing because I thought this would be, something that I could still be creative in that would be like something I could use across the board. I was like, this is a smart decision. And so college, there's so many different changes and, you're doing a lot all the
Yeah.
time. I definitely did not prioritize my art at the time. I was also an RA. There's not many chances for me to really sit and paint how I'd like to, and so I didn't. And I think then COVID happened, and I graduated December 2020 of COVID, and it was like, wow, everything's changed. All these new possibilities are becoming even more enlightened because of what we've had to do and like adjust to, especially with remote workers being an increase and digital marketers and all this other stuff, being able to like freely invest in yourself, but also have the time to do your own thing. That just really amazed me. And with my art, I finally got back into it after, I think, about a year. It took a while because I was in a very hard, toxic work environment and I had to leave another work environment and then I wasn't working.
Right.
Like I was unemployed for a little bit, really stressed out, and ended up basically painting so much because that was the only thing that like really felt good. I was so happy to not be in anything that was weighing me down managerially because I was a manager in both jobs and it was just a lot. And I never felt like I had time for myself outside of work, and that was really upsetting me. So luckily, I found a job after that where it was very low maintenance. I wasn't a manager. And in that job, I had so much more freedom and so much more energy after work to really like get into my art. And actually, right before I was unemployed, I had just sold my first art painting at a like street fair. I have a friend who lives in my complex, and she is someone who makes her own arts and crafts. She makes incense, candles,
Oh, cool.
main cloths, like all these things. And she's 70 and amazing. Like she's so inspiring. And so she asked me if I would want to display some of my art because she'd seen it at her booth. And I was like, yeah, that would be super cool. So I, just had some paintings up and had some price points. I at least thought of that much. And I was so amazed that maybe an hour or two into my day that like someone had stopped by and bought a painting.
Oh,
And I was like, wow, that felt really cool. And it was one of my favorite paintings too. Like, and we talked about it and I asked them like why they liked it. They liked the colors. I was like, yeah, and I really like how it glows.
mm.
It's a really stopping piece. We had to come look. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. And so when they did buy it, I was just like, what? I wasn't even completely prepared because I didn't have like the correct bag to put in it because I didn't think
Yeah.
to buy. Like I was just thinking, let me just put my art out there and just take that first step, right?
Yeah.
I was just shocked and floored that they bought it. And I was like, wow. So after that, I was like, I'm going to continue to do
Hmm.
this because it really brings me joy. And that's really a nice feeling to be able to interact with someone that you've never met, but then have this like one shared thing that you've created that they're like, oh, I love this so much. I want this.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I've done a lot with my business stuff. And so that's where I'm at right now is I've now gotten a year of officially being a business in the state terms or whatnot. But now I've really just started my art career and it's really exciting because I want to continue that.
I'm excited to get your perspective because I was, looking through your website before this conversation and you talked about putting your energy into this art as a kind of way to move yourself closer toward this ideal lifestyle that you have for yourself. And that's so cool because a lot of the other conversations I've been having around art, we've been talking about, which, I believe is also part of your story too, that it's kind of like creating just for the sake of creating.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah.
But also the reality of a lot of people's situations is that we do live in a capitalist society and you do have to make money. And so I see in your story, kind of balancing that you do have, this full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you pay the bills. And,
Yep.
but also, you found a way to kind of prioritize or add value to this other part of your life, not just that, which to acknowledge, I think is important, like is a privilege. Like not everybody has
Right.
the ability to choose a job that allows them to do that. And,
Right.
So it's awesome that you've been able to find that. And it's cool that your art can be kind of this tool. Not only do you get to create and get to do something you love, but you kind of, it has this dual purpose
Yep.
of being
Yeah,
something you're passionate about and being something that can realistically move you towards like this life that you see for yourself.
exactly. And I think that's just even more exciting. I feel like, especially after COVID, like a lot of us have had a shift in
Yeah.
prioritizing, like you've really had time to like slow down. Honestly, like it sucks that COVID happened, but I'm so thankful that it did for me
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like that time really allowed me to be with myself. I wasn't distracted by other
Yeah.
people, other things. Like we were all forced to quarantine and do other. And that was like maybe what I needed the most was to really be able to take a breath and
Mm-hmm.
think about what I really want out of my life. And so, yeah, after that, there's just no point in having a dream that I want to do that I never act on. Like, that's just
Mm.
going to happen if I can try. The only person to blame, not that there's anyone to blame, but it would be my downfall if I didn't at least
Mm-hmm.
give it a try. So, yeah, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. So all of my work is based in this theory of communication, that's CMM. And the big kind of claim there is that we are actually, active participants in creating our social worlds, and that,
Yeah.
we create through our communication then.
Yeah.
And I find that empowering. This obviously there's things in all of our lives that are out of our control, circumstances, or we, all have varying levels of control over our circumstances. But it's empowering to me to kind of focus on this, like, okay, well, what do you have control
Right.
over in your social world? And, it is a bummer, but I think true for a lot of people that the pandemic did give people for the first time a space to like slow down, be still, and reflect. And so, maybe if we lived in a world that didn't value busyness so much, we wouldn't need a global pandemic to make us
Right.
slow down, like
Yeah.
that's a shame.
Yeah.
But I know
No.
also true for a lot of people. And I think that says something about what art means to you, that in that reflective moment, this is kind of where it led you. So could you tell us a little bit more about what art means to you? And also, now that you have this business, what it means to you to get to share your art?
Yeah. Art really for me is therapeutic in the first way. It's amazing that whenever I do paint, I'm just focused on that. I don't really have things to worry about, as cliche as that can sound, but it's just really nice for me. And I also just very much admire other artists in multiple forms. Music. I love Doja. That is a whole other conversation, but I how she like crafts her music. And I like other artists too that I just, follow on Instagram because that's like the best way to discover new artists sometimes, especially in this day and age. And so I just get inspired by other people. And so whenever I see something that like I really like feel drawn to, I always want to emulate it or create or copy it. That's something I like to say that may or may not for some people be not popular opinion,
Mm.
but I love copying art, not stealing it, but copying.
Yeah.
There's such a difference, but people like always like to downplay copying. They're like, oh my God, you copied this person. It's like, but that person was so inspired by the other person
Yeah.
that they want to emulate a style or whatever. They're not claiming it as their own. If that's happening, that's definitely
Right.
not.
Yeah.
I think it's so important in art to copy because you learn more about yourself.
Mm.
When you think about like the styles that you wear, you had to start from somewhere
Yes.
before you got to what you actually like consider to be you. What Abbie wears is just a collection of these clothes that are meaningful to her and like how you want to express yourself. So the
Mm-hmm.
same thing happens with art. I love copying artists that I see and like learning the techniques that they use because that
Mm-hmm.
further like helps me learn what I like to do. And so I love watching videos of people doing tutorials. Like my YouTube watch like 20 episodes long sometimes. And it's like all these different techniques and styles. And it's so fun playing with it. While I'm doing this, I sometimes obviously make mistakes because no one's perfect and you're learning something new. So you're always going to kind of be a little rough at it to start. But in these mistakes, sometimes I felt like, Bob Ross and how he's just like, oh, happy, or like,
Yep. Happy accidents.
happy accidents. Thank you. But like happy accidents. And then like things just come about that you didn't think were going to happen. So it's like, you've got to start somewhere, pull from something you really like, and then use your own imagination to kind of make it more, change it up,
Mm-hmm.
play around with it. You're starting out. So there's nothing to like really worry about. It's just about finding what you really like So that's kind of been what art has been with me. I've really loved emulating different artists, but then also right now on my website, I've mostly been painting the Northern Lights, right? So the first painting I ever sold was a Northern Light, and I used acrylic. And in using acrylic, I was trying to learn this technique that was better with oils, but I had this misconception about like what I could use in oils in my apartment because I always heard things about like it being toxic, you needing like a very ventilated room. So I
Mm.
wasn't sure if I could do that in my like one bedroom apartment that I was in. I was like, I don't want to like get in trouble by having it go through the vents, whatever. So I just always stuck to acrylic. But I still did a really good job of emulating what it would have looked like if it was an oil. And I look back at that painting and I'm like, oh my God, like compared to what I make now, that is such a like simple painting that I'm like, wow, it's crazy to see how much can change in a year.
Hmm.
But like when I look at that painting, I'm like, oh my God, I cringe in a way. I sold something that looks like it's just crazy to me. This is just me and my own perception. In that, I use this color called phthalo green, and the phthalo green like turns really vibrant when you change it depending on what the color of the background canvas is. And
Mm.
so I was learning these techniques, and I was able to emulate as close as I could this northern light, and it was like really pretty. I was just like, wow, I can't believe I made this, and I was really proud by it at the time. That's all I needed, like, was just feeling so confident in that.
Hmm.
And so when sharing it with someone again, like I've said, it was really cool that someone else really just also felt that passion towards the painting.
Hmm.
And like even now, like my paintings are definitely better as when I started because I'd practiced and done it so many times. So it's like so cool to see also progression in terms of my skill with that and then
Hmm.
able to do more other ways with my art in order to be able to share it, but also receive income and stuff like that and to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I love your Northern Lights paintings. I think that's so beautiful. And I know that everything I have seen from you and what you talk about is being inspired by nature
Yes,
and the sky. So
yes.
specifically,
Oh my
in
God.
your recent art, where does that come from for you?
I really love, yeah, being outside and especially because I'm always one to take photos.
Hmm.
I always have my phone out, and if there's like a pretty sunset, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, picture, or a really pretty cloud, like, or it's always that. And then there's the moon. I love taking pictures of the moon, which is going to be another series that I plan to do, I think. But anyways, so it's just like the things that I see in nature, especially, and also because I've never seen the Northern Lights, but
Hmm.
I want to so
Me
badly
too.
because yeah, because in Minnesota, you can actually see it up north in Duluth, which is about 2 hours from me. And I just haven't gotten to see it. You can also see it in the Twin Cities, but again, light
Hmm.
pollution. So it's not as
Right.
great. But yeah, so I really want to see it. And so that's the biggest thing. Whenever I am with these customers or people that I'm meeting, it's really cool. Some people who have seen the Northern Lights and some people haven't.
Mm.
And some people are really wanting to. So then it's just like conversation starter. And
Yeah.
I love that because people ask me, have you seen them? And then they tell me, you should go here, you should go here, or like, this is the time frame. And they show me pictures. And that's just great. Like, I just love that that's like such a quick way to get to know someone and
Mm.
an aspect of someone so like organically. So I really love being able to talk to people about my art. I like will gush about it and how much I want to just do it all the time, even if I don't have time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is just something I've really realized within myself.
I also love looking up at the sky and maybe it overwhelms people to be like, wow, I'm so small. But I love it's like comforting to me actually to be reminded of how small I am because so I can take things very seriously sometimes. And there's many things that should be taken seriously, like it matters. I think how we show up to each other and the things that we do and how we treat the planet, for example.
I
And then
agree.
also it's kind of feels like a sigh of relief to look up and be like, oh, I'm actually so small and inconsequential in the universe.
No, yeah, I feel a lot of things, and I know you do too.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, that can just, yeah, it can just feel so overwhelming, to be honest. And oh, this is maybe, but I sometimes just can't like watch the news. Like it feels so much sometimes. Like I take information when I can, but to watch the news is so detrimental for me. Like, I don't know what that says about me and my trauma, but I just need a break because there's so much misinformation. There's so many things happening, and people are so divided. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's just one aspect, and it makes me feel like it's happening all the time when I hear it, when I watch the news. And so for me, it's very important to be out with people, to chat, to talk, because it brings me more joy than watching the news.
Yeah.
I get depressed. And so, again, like being able to create something, and yes, in this capital society, it would mean so much to me to be able to really live off of making my art without also compromising myself in the process, because it can be very hard for someone to really make a business profitable and living in it. You've got to have years and understanding, because there's trial and error. You're going to make mistakes, and that's fine, but it takes time to really make it into a living. And then there's never a guarantee.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you do get it to that, you've got to really continue working on it or have backup so you okay. And so that just makes it even more harder, because when people work in these like 9 to 5 jobs, myself included, and then, try to shift out of that, it can feel kind of nerve wracking. You're like, okay, I can lose the stability if I really get into this and then decide to like leave. Will I be okay? And it sucks to have to really think about that, but it's also like valid, it's a fair point to make, is that yes, you can invest in yourself, but be smart about it, because at the end of the day, you might not have many options when it comes down to it, especially right now. So it just really depends, depending on your situation, if you really know yourself and what you're able to do. I'm really fortunate, again, that I have this job that I do. It's been very beneficial to me in multiple ways. And so I'm really excited, because that paired with more space I have and the more energy I have towards doing this. Granted, I had some transitions like moving and starting this new job. So I did pause on my art for like 6 months or so, because I just needed time to like adjust.
Yeah.
But now that I'm kind of getting into my routines and things like that, I'm really excited for this new year. I feel like I've started it off really well. I've got a lot of things in motion, which I'm excited about, because it could be my first like actually somewhat profitable year. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm looking forward to all the things.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Is making me think that, to talk about what you were saying about what you hear on the news. Like, yes, we live in a world with war, for example, and a lot of suffering, and we also live in a world where there's things like the Northern Lights, and so there is, beauty also exists right alongside all the ugliness of the world. So I think it's cool that, I see one of the purposes that your art kind of serves for people is like bringing us back to that beauty. And that's not to say, never watch the news, don't know what's going on in the world. It's hard.
Definitely.
Because, totally looking away from that is kind of doing yourself a disservice as well. But when you can kind of sit in the complexity of like the hard and also the beautiful things that exist right alongside each other, then I think it can make the beauty more important, that you do find ways to pay attention to that, and at least, like take the time to acknowledge it.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's definitely important to keep yourself updated. And it's like at the same time to like give it to yourself, like you can only do so much, and like you should do as much as you can, but it's also important to like take care of yourself. So that's something that really helps me take care of myself, while I feel everything so greatly.
Yep.
So, like I pour that into my art, and just have that same passion and energy that I feel for everything, and kind of just turn it into something that I can share. So that's hopefully where I continue to go in my journey here. I know there's a lot of things that will have to happen in the meanwhile, but I'm excited for the journey, and it's going to be a really good one.
Yeah. Where do you find beauty?
Besides nature, I think definitely locations as well. Like I love traveling. And that's something too that I've like thought about with my art, is in the future, what I really would love to do is to be able to grow it to a point that I can also travel and make landscapes with it too. That's something I want to dive into. And again, it's just about the flexibility. I want to see more of the world, and I want to continue to make and be inspired by other things. And so, I do want to grow with that and be able to change up my style as well. I know I've only just started out, but I really think landscapes are my thing. Um, I love people, but it's funny. I use painting as my main medium, but I also like to draw, and I usually draw better people than I paint them because I haven't taken the time to focus on all of that.
That's on the YouTube watch later.
Definitely, definitely, but not for a while because I got to stick with one thing
Yes.
at a time. But yeah, I don't know. I just think art's amazing in all forms, and I get really excited about being able to share it with people. And I also love learning different styles. Like I want to eventually get into pottery making,
Mm.
so crochet and like other, and it's like, oof, art's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's expensive to have
Yeah.
you would like to start up in the fashion of like being able to do it consecutively. Like that's a privilege in its own
Yeah.
because not everyone gets access to these materials and things like that. So I've been very fortunate to be able to invest in it,
Right.
maybe before other priorities. But that was something that I really felt like I had to do for myself. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like, if I'm going to use my money, I'm going to use it for my art. That's just kind of what my thing has been. But yeah, I think the whole thing about art is, in my opinion, that it seems like a luxury, but it's funny because you have to turn it into something else. So it's not just a price tag. And what I mean by that is some people have this thing of, well, why is this art piece this much money? It's just paint splotches, right? And to someone else, it's like, yeah, but this is more than just paint splotches, right? Depending on who the artist is, they've got this history. And yeah, sometimes art can be completely random. And that's sometimes the beauty of it too. There's just so much versatility with it
Mm-hmm.
that like, it's funny to me, especially once I started out making my art, having to value your art in a capitalist world is so hard when
Mm.
there's these literal businesses with multiple employees and you're just like single person making this stuff. And so you really have to think in terms of like a business person, right? And this is where I'm like, oh, thank God that I did do this marketing because I've got a little clue as to like
Thank
the
God for that business degree.
right.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is gonna work out just fine. I haven't lost everything in what I learned. When you think about pricing your items, you've got to think about it in terms of, yeah, the capitalist society, sadly, because otherwise you put yourself in an even smaller category of being able to be successful sometimes. Like it's very rare, but like you've got to start somewhere before you're able to invest more to do what you really want to do.
Yeah,
So you
right.
got to the ball a little bit. And so I'm really lucky that I did decide to do business marketing because a lot of artists don't learn how to market themselves, how to share themselves with people. They know how to make the art, but it's like, how do you get out to people? And I think that has been my biggest thing. Like, I'm always a person too to like love to talk to new people. So this just became like even more of a reason for me just to go and talk to people. And so I really love that. And that I've also taken so much time to learn about like the aspects of being able to share my art and how I can again grow to do what I need to do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sad that art is something that is a privilege to have, It's upsetting in that way that, yes, you can still get art stuff and art supplies that are affordable. And there are places that do very big sales, which is really nice for people lower income to be able to still purchase something and not have it feel like a luxury. But
Mm.
know that that's another thing of like artists. You don't always hear about them. They're kind of like silent, when you think about high school and how people usually took art as an elective if they really liked it. Like you wouldn't learn anything about art
Yeah, yeah.
other than the greats Van Gogh. It's like you never really heard about current artists. You heard about these old oil paintings. And then that was
Uh-huh.
it. Your knowledge of it, unless you really cared for it, was going to be minimal. So, having to be also like a minority in that sense of like art is not something many people look out to get to know. It's just like whether you have the interest or not that you're born with it, but are just very lucky to be really good when you start out, it's like very small. And then again, when people go to art college, it's like super expensive, not really individuality, and
Mm,
not, but it's college. And then you get into like, again, artists that want to grow with themselves, but they haven't learned any ways of like how to actually make this happen. I feel like with the artists out there in the communities, a lot of them have to really learn through their experiences and
mhm,
really understand themselves and where they're at, because they're going to always feel there are people that are trying to like put them in a box, and
mhm.
like kind of define what they should be valued for and things like that. When it's like, no, when you think of the art that you've made and what you've done for it, it's like you should feel happy for what you're pricing your stuff at, and also how to like stand up to people who want to make you feel smaller than you are, when you've done so much and they don't know what you've done to like put your art out there. So there are people that have these like stigmas with artists, and there's like the starving artist trope.
Yep, yep.
So yeah, there's lots of different things about it that I've been trying to work towards overcoming and things like that as I go.
Yeah, I wonder if, yeah, because we have this starving artist trope and that, yeah, the culture at large maybe is not giving messages that say, we really value art and pursue this. It's a worthwhile pursuit.
Yeah.
Which, I feel like it's always in the movies, like the kid wants to be an artist or an actress or something, and the parents are like, that's not a
Right.
safe career path. And it's like that narrative is so ingrained in us. And I wonder if maybe what you're seeing in the art community is that there's maybe a lot of competition because there's like a scarcity mindset almost about what's out there for artists. And so I'm wondering, as we talk about like better social worlds, obviously one of those that you'd be a part of is this community of artists. So I'm curious, what is your hope for an art community?
And I wouldn't say per se that there's competition, because everyone is so different in what they do and how they do
Mm-hmm.
it. It's not as standardized as you might think, but there is competition in terms of like, I guess, where you can find places that will take you. When you're
Oh,
thinking
sure.
art markets, they only accept so many artists, and things like that, and different categories. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and you've got to pay. And these
Right.
booth fees can be expensive, like
Wow.
$350 for a 2-day fair or something like that. And if you think about that money that you're putting in,
Mm-hmm.
think about the money that you're bringing, if you're traveling, lodging, there's so many things that kind of make it harder for artists unless you've got something stable to really be in it full time without potentially taking some big losses. So it can be slow to go depending on who you are. But like, especially for me, I know that I didn't get information about being an artist. I didn't know how to do this. I just started learning it like last year,
Mm-hmm.
and to have been as well, I would say for my own goals, I've been super successful in what I thought I could do. I just really want it to be something that other artists as well. This is something I want to dive into a little bit more in the future after I've actually built something with my art. But I want to be able to share the knowledge of how I've done it with others. Granted, my story is going to be different than anyone else's in terms of what they could do, but I just want to share like the knowledge that I've received in terms of making my art something that I can live off of, because I know that I'm going to do it, and it's not even like a question of if, it's just like when. So being really confident in that, I really want to share, because I know I did so much time and research to watch videos, to learn things with the state and making sure I was compliant with my business. Like there's just so many things that aren't talked about enough, especially within the art community. Not to say that it's like gatekeeping, but people do also deserve the right to not have to share everything that they've done and have their own privacy. But it's nice though when you can help people when you can. And so I want to do the same in being able to share again, like tips that I've learned and things that I've overcome with other people, just to kind of help grow the community of artists that are able to obtain this knowledge without feeling that they've got to pay for a course or, whatever else to continue on this like cycle. It should be open and it should be as accessible to as many people as possible, because we really do need more art, I think, in our world when like there's just so many things that are manufactured. Art is just so nice to have something handmade, whether it be a knit clothing piece or, pottery, whatever it is in all forms. It's so nice to be able to purchase these things and support communities and people by supporting the artist, and
Mhm.
growing that. Like we need more artists than we need these full 5-day work weeks. Like that's another conversation another day. I just really feel like that would help us, feel more joy out of life, not feel like we had to work until we are 70 years old, actually be able to live life and enjoy it, not have to wait until like later, like do it now. And so I really love the idea of investing in people within the community and growing people so that people have more opportunities to be able to live a little bit more freely. And so, yeah, that's something that I just want to do. And if people want to support it, that's awesome. And that's just like my goal for myself is to be able to get to that point that I can live my life freely and be able to be more happy with other people as well.
I'm glad you clarified that. So yeah, maybe competition is not the right word, but in what I'm hearing you say, maybe there is some of that like scarcity mindset and behind,
Yeah.
kind of gatekeeping and things like that. And it makes sense that, your hope is this more encouraging kind of art community,
Mm-hmm.
maybe acting more of like an invitation instead of a shutting out to say, yes,
Absolutely.
come learn from me. And that I can see so clearly, not someone who I wouldn't consider myself part of an art community, but I could see how that could be a kind of better version of the social world that you'd
Yeah.
hope to create for yourself. Because I think
Right.
little ripple effect kind of thing, if you as one single artist can, be open and sharing and invite other artists in that way, I just think it makes sense that those people will also turn around and then do the same. And
Yeah.
then you'll look around and all of a sudden you have an encouraging, open, loving, supportive art community,
Right. Yeah. And then grow it more. Like I
Mhm.
want it to be something that more people have knowledge about, talked about more. It's not like, you have to be the best of the best to only really know how to do it. Like it should be open. Like we shouldn't have to create tiers as well within the art community of like, oh, this is like a high brand art and this is,
Mm.
art at a crafts fair. Like it should just be art all in total. And so I just really want to like bridge that gap. Not that I'm like aiming to be the top of the top. I just really want to share with people. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Outside of, maybe a community of artists, how has your interest in art, your ability to create art, how does that influence the way you interact with the world and the rest of your life? Does it, give you kind of any new perspective for how you engage with the world that you don't think you'd have if you weren't an artist?
I think honestly, with my art, I've gained a lot more confidence as well because having to share a piece of myself kind of just means I'm always a little vulnerable with others. And so I honestly just feel like, yeah, I've taken more people in strides and like have been a lot more willing to do things that I wouldn't have done before because again, I'm like growing out of my comfort zone in this way of like having to share my art. So I try to kind of also do that in other aspects of my life. I just think it's important again, like especially now, to just really connect with other people. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to surround myself when I'm at these art shows and craft fairs to have so many different connections with people and some people that want to connect with me continuing in the future and stuff like that. And that's just really awesome to be able to do that. So I really, I'm really grateful for it because it gives me the opportunity to go and meet people without feeling like, again, like there's like places you can go, but you got to sign up for a club and do all this other stuff or whatever. Like sometimes there's just not as many opportunities just to be with people and communicate. And so I think this is like my way of being able to do that for myself. And I would wish to be able to have other people also do that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That the relationship building part seems important. And you seem, that seems one of the most valuable things that you're getting out of this based on the way you're talking about it.
Definitely. Cause I think without it, it's like, well, then I'm just selling a product, like,
Yeah.
and that's not what my hope is, like, yes, I am trying to sell to make means, but that's not like the end goal. More than anything, I just want to connect with people. And it's a bonus if I can live off of it, but I think more so, I really just enjoy sharing art with other people.
Outside of, the ways that you've, as the artist, have been able to connect with people in spaces like these art fairs, like you're talking about, how else do you see art as being this driving force behind connection?
I'd say when you think of art, sometimes it's hard to say that there's a group of people that would specifically like this. I mean, you can kind of generalize to a degree, when you think of like Minnesota, for example, the fact that I have a painting or I'm painting something that some people can talk about. It's a conversation point, right? That might not be true of someone that lives in a different state that maybe never seen heard of much of the Northern Lights. It's really geographical depending on where you are. And so I think it's cool that depending on the topic, or at least in my case, the thing that I am painting of, what series I started, I will meet different groups of people, So it's like we've got the sunset paintings, which I haven't done much of selling of those as of right now because those were with acrylic, now doing oil paints. And so my sunsets will look a whole lot better. These oil paints, but I haven't gotten into it because I've been focused on my Northern Lights and like abstract space art. But when I think about like the different types of people that really draw to different types of art, it's really cool. It just kind of gives me like literally an excuse to be like, I'm going to paint this. And then the people that like this will come and talk to me. Like, it's just like whatever I'm feeling like the most passionate about. It's so cool to be able to be like, oh, wow, I would have never maybe met you in any other way besides the fact that we share this connection right now, And so I think more people should bring themselves to art fairs and art shows and just
Yeah.
even the stroll and the walk. It's a conversation starter in any right. Like you're always going to find something that's drawn to you. And so I think that that's the biggest thing. I feel like people should do that more. I feel like there should be more of them that are accessible to people to do. Like just think that would be so good. And having more people again connect with others and like not be so behind like screens and things. Like I just think that's another really great way for us to build our communities, to make new friends and relationships and things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of bring up this like nuance in, not only the fact that you are creating, but what you create as well. It speaks to many things on its own because, we can talk about art, quote unquote, but
Right.
what even is that, like within that, like you're saying, there are so many different mediums, so many different styles, so many different ways to be an artist.
Yep.
And so, you can't talk about it as one big sweeping generalization.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's its own world. And it's just like, again, like in my opinion, it's just not talked about enough unless you are into it or if you got brought. But I just want it to be more commonly talked about for people. Like it shouldn't be quietly like, oh, like you either know what you're doing or you don't. Like I think the knowledge should be there, since it is such a small, not like such a small, but it can be a hard community to be in if you're not actively able to. And so I really think that it's important for people to be able to talk about it more and again, support the people that are making it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in the interest of, getting into the nuance of it, one of the things I'm so curious about is like your process as an artist, how it goes from, okay, I'm staring at a blank canvas. Maybe I have a photo, as a point of reference. And now it's the Northern Lights, like for someone like me, like I think of myself as a pretty creative person. I have an imagination, so I can maybe kind of fill in, but I'm curious about for you. And again, not to say you're speaking to every artist process because it's going to be different, but what is your process like?
Yeah. So it's funny because it really just depends on my mood. And it's funny because I realized too, I paint more and it's just me, maybe not, but I paint more when it's sunny, because I love being out in the sun. I think a lot of people do. I really enjoy when it's bright out because my room just fills up with light. And so winter can be hard, but I still make the time. I just have to push myself a little bit more. But I love painting and being able to like either find a reference photo or have watched something that like was playing Northern Lights, and then using the like techniques that I've learned from like video tutorials, being able to play around. Especially with my Northern Lights, I usually use black gesso paint that like I put on a canvas. And I do that specifically because whenever I do paint my Northern Lights, it needs to have like a dark background when I do my little swoosh thing. So basically, like I paint what I see or an imagination I have and just kind of let the lines flow as they go. And sometimes it's strategic, sometimes again, happy accidents. And so I play around with it. And then I have usually time that I need to wait for obviously the painting to dry and having to like apply a varnish and things like that, sign, screw in the holes in the back and make it ready to be that they can be ready to be hung up and stuff like that. So all of this, and also product photos, all of this is usually how I go about my like paintings. But sometimes I will just find myself painting like multiple paintings a day and then not really touching it for like weeks and then coming back to it. It just depends really on what I feel like my painting is complete. Because sometimes I'll look at it and I'll be like, no, I think I could come back to this. So I'll like set it aside for a week and then come back to it and be like, yeah, I think I might add this other thing. Or I might hate it so much I just scrap it completely and I just paint like just so over it again and start over. But it's fun to have the flexibility and it's fun to come back to the things that I've made and also like continue being consistent because then it drives my style to my own even more with more things that I do and play around with. So I really like it.
That's great. I'm one of the things that I'm hearing in your story that I think is, important for everyone to do is kind of this perspective you have of like art, not as this insular thing in your life, but it being connected to literally everything else that you're doing. And I think that's so important, kind of looking at context. That's a huge communication thing to help us understand like, well, what's going on here? Because, you could be super zoomed in on this one moment. That's, well, you said that to me and I said that to you. And then what happened there? But if you zoom out, you can see that, well, what about all the things we said before that? Or what about the bigger relationship we have, how we always relate to each other, or the kind of society we live in? How is that shaping us? And so there's beauty in the kind of up close personal, like, wow, look at this moment. And then also beauty and more perspective in the kind of zooming out. And that, I say, what's your process? And you start by talking about if there's sunshine or not. I wouldn't have thought to say, okay, go all the way back and start there. I specifically said, okay, blank canvas, where do you go from there? But you are saying, that you're even so aware that it doesn't exist. It doesn't just start with a blank canvas. It starts with your mood and when did you get the canvas and what's it like outside and what other things are going on in your life. And, we talk about the art is the, kind of, not to just say it's a means to an end, but part of this journey that you want to go on toward, enabling you to have the kind of life you want. So your art is connected in that way, and you acknowledging that it's important that you have the kind of job that you do have for your 9 to 5 that allows you to come home with this energy to then pour into art. Mm-hmm. I just think that's so important too. Again, talking about quote unquote art.
Yeah.
we could mean whatever, but I think I want to maybe end on a note of like, it's actually so much more accessible to people than they think. Cause it's not to say you are an artist or you're not, or you are someone that's creative or you're not. Mm-hmm. Because like you're saying, even in a capitalist society, even if you're working in 9 to 5, like there are ways for you to kind of access this creativity or be a part of a community or build relationships. It doesn't have to be, I'm a full-time artist and that's what, it means to do art, like art or even beauty. Like, let's go back to the smallest thing, like recognizing beauty can be a practice in anybody's life.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. I really think that we should take more time to see beauty in the smaller things that we take for granted a lot of the time. Yeah, I just feel like right now there's just so much that is unknown for the future. And I just right now want to be able to create as many and connect with as many people on different notes as I can. That's just kind of what I want. So that's what I want to continue doing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, Sharon.
Thank you.
Well, as we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say about your art, what it means to you, what you hope for your art?
Yeah, I just think, again, like being able to connect with people will be the goal that I will always have for myself. And I think it would be really cool for my younger self just to, again, be like, wow, I did that. I was able to really take a chance with myself and grow and put myself out there for other people, and knowing that like I want the good for others and I want the good for myself. And so I just want to continue going there, and I know I will. And I'm just really excited for the journey. So
Thanks, Sharon.
thank you.
Okay, that is all for our conversation with Sharon. In the show notes, I've included a link to her website. Definitely check out all the awesome art she has for sale and maybe even buy a piece for yourself. At the end of each episode, I like to offer some questions to reflect on. This acts as a next turn for us so that the conversation doesn't stop when the episode does. Today, I just have one question I would have you think about, and that is to ask, how can an investment in art, in any and all kinds of art, translate into an investment in ourselves, our well-being, and our communities? I imagine it's pretty clear where that question came from in our conversation with Sharon today. And as I think about our conversation as a whole and what it meant and what the core of it really was, that's the question that came to my mind. And it's one that I will continue to reflect on for myself too. You are welcome to reach out to me to share your own reflections as well as any other questions or ideas. I invite you to do that through email, through the website, or by commenting on Instagram and YouTube. Links to all of those are in the show notes, as always. And the reason I invite you to share your reflections with me is to stay in dialogue. Other great ways to keep dialogue going is to follow the show wherever you listen. That way you're not missing any new episodes. You can also leave a rating and review. This really helps to get the podcast in front of as many people as possible. So if you take the 1 minute it takes to do that, that means a lot to me. But really most important to me is sharing the episodes, this episode or any episode that has been meaningful for you, with people that you want to invite into the conversation. So you can easily share episodes through texts, but also by posting links to episodes on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever other social medias you use. And if you do that, you are welcome to tag me on Instagram at Stories Live, Stories Told Pod, and on LinkedIn and Facebook at the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution, which is a great segue because I am supported by the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution. And this podcast is just one of many, many initiatives, all with the goal of moving us toward those better social worlds that we hope to create. You can learn more about the CMM Institute and our other initiatives at the links I have included in the show notes. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being curious. And thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abbie, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told.